Hill Chapel, a Unitarian spiritual community in Hampstead, North London. We are a spiritual home for open minds, whoever you are, and however you are this morning, there is space for you here. And even though we aren't together physically, there's a space for you here. And there's a chance to take some time out to reconnect with yourself, with others, and with that which you hold to be of greatest worth. As we continue with our monthly theme of healing, I will be reflecting on some of the lessons I've learned as a doctor about what it takes to heal. In the notices, if you haven't already, you can sign up to weekly email notices via our website for more information on all our activities. And with a new lockdown on us and the pandemic set to continue to the next year, we're looking to extend pastoral care at Rosiglin Hill, particularly for those feeling most isolated. We will set up a phone tree system where a group of chapel members, volunteers, will be phoning other members, usually once a week, to check how you are. Phoning will start very soon, so do expect a call. In the meantime, we hope you will continue to enjoy the upcoming Sunday services. Some of this will be via Zoom and some on our YouTube channel. So please look for details in the weekly notices. And don't forget that the Soul Deep spiritual discussions continue every Tuesday evening, another way to connect. We are an independent registered charity and rely on contributions to continue our work. You can donate via our Just Giving webpage or using the donate button on our website. And thank you for the many ways that you contribute to our spiritual community. John will now play our Prelude. we light this chalice, the symbol of our liberal Unitarian faith. May its flame be as the light of knowledge in our minds and the warmth of love in our hearts. In this season of Diwali, we can also celebrate the victory of light over darkness. The reading today is called Mending by Reverend Nancy Schaefer, and it will be read by my friend Martha Richler.
How shall we mend you, sweet soul? What shall we use, and how is it in the first place you've come to be torn? Come sit, come tell me. We will find a way to mend you. I would offer you so much, sweet soul. This banana, sliced in rounds of palest, yellow atop hot cereal, or these raisins, scattered through it if you'd rather. Would offer cellos in the background, singing melodies Vivaldi heard and wrote for us to keep. Would hold out to you everything colored blue or lavender or light green. All of this I would offer you, sweet soul. All of it, or any piece of it, might mend you. I would offer you, sweet soul, this chair by the window, this sunlight on the floor, and the doggie asleep in it. I would offer you my silence, my presence, all this love I have, and my sorrow. You've become torn. How shall we mend you, sweet soul? With these, I think, gently we can begin. We will mend you with a rocking chair, some raisins, a doggie, a field of lavender beginning now to bloom. We will mend you with songs remembered entirely the first time ever they are heard. We will mend you with pieces of your own sweet self, sweet soul, with what you've taught from the very beginning. Thank you, Jane.
Our hymn today is 249, Life's Greatest Gifts. prayer for all. Spirit of life and God, God of our hearts, as we seek connection with someone, something beyond ourselves, we remained humbled by the awesome complexity of the universe, the miracle of creation, and the grace of the ultimate Spirit. In this time of prayer, let us give thanks for our families, friends, and community, and our many gifts by naming our blessings quietly to ourselves in these moments of stillness. Recognizing our woes and faults and unhealed wounds, let us sit quietly with those parts of ourselves which cause us discomfort, with a spirit of gentle understanding and forgiveness. Spirit of the Divine Self, we open our hearts to listen to the wisdom of the still, small voice that may speak in these quiet moments. God of our hearts, let this small act of worship send a ripple of loving kindness from this place to our loved ones, our acquaintances, and the wider world. O God, may we become the embodiment of divine love. Blessed be. Amen. called this talk some midlife notes on healing because it's a reprise of an old talk I gave a few years ago when our former minister, Jim Robinson, asked me to give a sermon on my work as a doctor in the Royal Free Emergency Department, specifically on what promotes healing in human beings. Looking at what I wrote then, the years have had a maturing effect. I have seen thousands of patients since then, lost my parents, watched my children fledge, become a grandmother, had the run of joys and disappointments, as well as perspective shifts through books and Tavistock studies. But I will start with my earlier thoughts on healing and then reflect on the insights. At the time, I said, and I still believe, that healing involved 4 R's: risk management, resilience, repair, and recovery. Managing risk is a big factor in avoiding the need for healing. I'm referring to health-promoting behaviors, fitness, wholesome lifestyle, attention to mental health, good relationships, having purpose, valuing yourself. An ounce of prevention really is a pound of cure. And luck plays a part as well. In my work as a doctor, I see many examples of how resilience happens. Resilience would be my second R. Resilience is influenced by mental and emotional functioning. It is independent of affluence. While powerful unconscious forces can stymie healing and lead to psychosomatic suffering and feeling stuck, in my experience, people with a strong life force who are engaged in the world tend to find it easier to take adversity in their stride and to heal. You see examples of this if you've ever volunteered in our cold weather shelter program. There I met a teenager who left home in Africa to escape conscription to the Eritrean army in a violent war, walked across Europe, finding himself in London temporarily homeless, but still joyful and delighted to sleep in our warm hall. What does resilience take? But it comes naturally to some people, but it can also be learned. It's like creating your own protective shield. Some building blocks for resilience include having a sense of self-worth, hope, a sense of personal agency and problem solving, as well as being able to recruit support systems like friends, family, and community. This week I listened on the Today Show to an interview with 100-year-old Eddie Yaku, a survivor of Buchenwald, Auschwitz, and the Nazi death march. He'd written a memoir called The Happiest Man on Earth. His message is that what helped his spirit not to break was practicing gratitude, tolerance, and kindness, as well as having a friend who, in his words, is someone who reminds you to feel alive. And I would have to agree with Eddie that my friends do indeed remind me to feel alive. My third R is repair. All healthy living things are driven at the most basic level to self-repair. It's encoded in our genes. To make a stable, continuous lifespan requires different self-regulating repair systems and adaptations to changes and in the internal and external environment. For example, it happens at the DNA level, where a cell may have up to 1 million separate DNA repair jobs per day. An injured single DNA strand can look to a sister chromatid on the double helix to provide a template for repair, just as people close to us can help restore us to wholeness when our normal functions fail by reminding us who we really are. The fourth R would be recovery, or to cover again. To be ill or injured or traumatized is to be exposed, disrupted, vulnerable. And that takes regenerating our protective shield, possibly requiring things like medicine, surgery, therapy, nutrition, compassion, trust, grieving, creativity. Prayer or meditation can also aid you to restore a hopeful belief in the safety of the universe and your place in it. Recovery takes time and space. The time it takes may not always correlate with the severity of the injury. Healing takes the time it takes, and space allows for the adaptive distance to get perspective, with the possibility that in recovering one can gain some added measure of strength and insight. I'm thinking here of a friend who is having a complex medical situation, and then she goes to her piano and plays for a couple of hours, and the stress will clear with being immersed in something else. So these were my ideas many years ago, but they still are. What would I add at this stage in my life? An image of an old whale breaching in the ocean springs to mind, with its barnacled fins and scarred skin. Or maybe that's just me surfacing at this pulpit for my once-a-decade homily. I suppose that what I most appreciate now is that healing is often incomplete. If we live long enough, we will all have some scars and barnacles. Wounds can run deep, emotional ones as well, and they can be lifelong. Sometimes the best we can achieve is a tolerable disability or a slight relief of suffering. COVID can strike, take 16 weeks to recover from, or it can linger, and recovery can be more challenging. So what do I know more clearly? Reality means that we will likely suffer, often through no fault or weakness of our own. Many of us will face overwhelming challenges to who we believe ourselves to be, physically, mentally, or emotionally. And that often healing is only partial. So what are my new R's? How do I manage this? I will keep with the R theme and would say recreation and realistic accommodation to reality. I like the word recreation because it means recreation. And if there's one thing that I most believe promotes healing, it would be recreation, specifically closeness to nature and play. If I did not have the heath in my life or its equivalent, nothing would make much sense. It's where I decompress, think, walk my dog, meet my friends, swim, play, appreciate the seasons, and recreate or mend my soul. Without recreation, life would be too tedious to endure. Beyond that, there's the trickier concept of realistic accommodation to reality. Recently, I read an article where the author referred to a politician's subject as attempting to bend reality to his will. There are a lot of politicians like that. There are a lot of people like that, myself included, who could stand accused. But as maturity sets in, I've come to appreciate the value of realistic accommodation as a strategy that must surely be intrinsic to healing, especially when healing is incomplete. After the tragic death of his wife and child in a car accident, Joe Biden's father sent him a copy of a cartoon, which he still keeps framed on his desk. It shows Hagar the Horrible being blasted in a boat by a storm as he shouts up to the heavens, "Why me?" And God replies, "Why not?" He explains that the cartoon was his father's way of saying that there's no way to rationalize what had taken place. It can happen to anyone at any time. "Where's it written that the world owes you a living, pal? Get up," his father used to say, "because if you don't get up, it will crush you." Being realistic or resigned to a reality that one truly cannot change is a challenge to the ego. It's not easy, nor is it passive. It requires discernment, grace, courage, and some belief in a possible future, but it will enhance healing. As much as one would like to pretend that the world and its inhabitants are what you want them to be, they aren't. It's inevitable you will be disappointed. And yet there's a certain freedom, sometimes even pleasure, in maturity and learning to accept and live in the world not as one wishes it could be or should be, but the way it is, putting aside fantasies, illusions, delusions, or anything that clouds our ability to see reality. By the way, acceptance doesn't necessarily mean judging it as good. In fact, it means that sometimes you must turn away from the things you cannot change. Spare your life energy. Put it elsewhere. God, give me grace to accept with serenity the things that cannot be changed, courage to change the things which should be changed, and the wisdom to distinguish the one from the other. Or in a more human-centered, less God-centered way of putting it, I think the reading Mending, when she says, presumably to herself, "We will mend you with pieces of your own sweet self, sweet soul, with what you've taught from the very beginning." She is talking about just that capacity to patiently attend to one's own sweet but sometimes broken soul, to the wisdom of that still small voice that may speak in quiet moments. Listen to it. Recognize that it will be your guide to what is true, sound, authentic, and most likely to restore wholeness. As humans, most of us are born with a remarkable capacity for survival through self-regulation and self-repair. Despite that, and despite the world-class hospital down the road where I work, illnesses and injuries happen. If we live long enough, there will be scars and barnacles, and some healing will be incomplete. But the arc towards health will lie in cultivating resilience, taking time for recreation, and a realistic acceptance of reality that will allow you to decide where you want to place your faith. I am quoting from two other former ministers, one Patrick O'Neill, whose favorite blessing was this passage from Paul Tillich, "Shaking of the Foundation." "This world is not at any time without saviors, without healing power. Salvation happens whenever a wall is broken through, whenever a wound is healed, whenever a hurt is forgiven. We are called to be priests to one another in this life, and if priests, also counselors, and if counselors, also physicians. And Fred Lipp would say, "Fix, O Lord, our steps, so that we stagger not at the uneven motions of the world, but go steadily on our way, neither censoring the journey by the weather we meet, nor stepping aside from anything that might befall us." John will postlude now.